In this video, we are going to learn how to tackle the inference-based question where the question demands you to find the inference or identify an inference which best supports the statements or the premise given in the question itself. Okay, now in this question, I'll also show you how I do my scratch work or what I mean by it. So let's start with reading the premise or the argument that is given there. In a recent press conference, the government promised the citizens of town Y that a new national highway will not pass through the existing archaeological sites neighboring town Y, including site Z. So it is talking about some town Y. So let's say there is a town which is called Y, and what the government is saying is that a new national highway will not pass through and it has promised the existing archaeological heritage sites. So there must be some existing archaeological sites in town Y, including the site Z. Okay, so it says there are some, let's say, sites, right? And there is a highway, and the highway it's not passing through here or passing through here. Okay. However, the new highway, so now it talks about one particular highway, will pass within a mile of site Z, which is situated at the center of an area rich in archaeological sites, and will not pass through within a mile of site Z, which is the center of an area rich in archaeological sites yet to be completely discovered. So it is saying that there is some site called site Z, right? And it's not completely discovered, so it has chances of expanding. Okay. And then there is a highway which will not pass through 1 mile, right? So this thing is 1 mile. That's what it's saying. Okay. So this is my scratch work. Help me remember things. Right? What are the key things again that the government has promised? Not to pass. Then it has to be an existing one, not a yet to be discovered one. But this one, Z, yet to be discovered. Okay, so this is my scratch work. I'm done with my scratch work now. I've noted all the important points. I have sort of devised a mind map to remember what all key messages were given by the author in the argument. Okay, now I will go and start my process of elimination. This is how I tackle all my questions. So the first thing is, the first option says the government has broken its promise to the citizens of town Y. Okay. Well, this contradicts the first premise, the first part of the premise. Contradicts. And this is what I'm saying, that you write down what you think. Why you're rejecting this option. So I am saying that I am rejecting it because it contradicts the first premise, where the government has promised that it will not pass any new national highway, and it is also saying that the new highway that it is saying will be within a mile of the site Z. So while the government is maintaining its promise of not passing it through the existing site Z area, it might be in the future something is discovered, but the government is not promised for that, right? So if you're saying that the government is broken its promise, that means the new highway was passing through site Z. So if it says, however, the new highway passes through site Z, which is situated at the center of an area rich in archaeological sites yet to be discovered, also then it is not true. It has to be saying that it passes through site Z, which is the center of an area of rich archaeological sites. That's it. If this yet to be completely discovered phase was not there, then probably A would have been true. But currently it is not true. So I will reject this option because it contradicts the first premise itself, which is that it has to be an existing site. Okay. Moving to option B, the citizens of town Y are worried that the noise the new highway will generate might discourage those tourists from site Z. Well, it is A, based on a massive assumption which is not in the premise. So you cannot go so much beyond the premise that you add new phenomena that are not talked about in the premise. So I will also reject this one. C says unless the national highway plan is changed, undiscovered archaeological sites will possibly be damaged during the highway's construction. Well, this is true. This is slightly extension from your existing premise. It's not including any new phenomena. What it is saying is that if this is the path, then it could be that these sites are destroyed, because the passage already says that site Z is a center of rich archaeological sites, right? Is at the center of rich archaeological sites. So if the plan is not changed, if the highway is so close to site Z, it could be that undiscovered archaeological sites will possibly get damaged, right? So there is nothing wrong with saying this. So this is something that we can infer from the passage or conclude from the passage, because it fits well with the premise. It's an extension to the premise, but not so extended that it is basing new assumptions or new phenomena for it to be true. So I think this is the answer, but we will still go ahead and look at other options. D says now that the government has shown its commitment to preserving archaeological heritage sites, well, this in itself is slight extension. And then it says there is no longer a threat to site Z or to whatever archaeological sites there are in vicinity. Now this is the author now going and saying that there is an assumption that the highway is constructed such, or there is an assumption that the undiscovered sites will not fall within the highway. This assumption is not from premise. It is author's own bias or its own assumption. There is nothing in the premise which suggests that it's no longer a threat. So this is also contradicting to the tone of the passage. This is why I will reject it, because it's taking away from the tone, right? The tone is slightly critical of the new highway, and you are taking it away and saying that new highway has no possible damage. So I'm rejecting this as well. Lastly, it is not that important if the area around site Z is damaged by highway, since the interest in archaeology is decreasing. This is a giant leap from the premise. We have not talked about increase or decrease in the archaeological interest of the people. It is also not given that people are protecting it or are worried about it because of their inclination or because of their feelings towards archaeology. So since it is far away from the premise and talks about a new concept again, basically I will decline this as well. So since I have a reason to eliminate all of these options, and this is the only option that I had picked as the correct option, the OA to this question is C. But wait, I did not make this whole video to just do an example with you, right? So what I did was I took this example and then I tried to reverse engineer on how to solve these questions. Okay, so this is what I found. The first thing is that in questions which talk about you finding the inference, there is no conclusion, because if conclusion is given, then the paragraph is already over, right? You cannot infer further than the conclusion. So you will always have to draw a conclusion which furthers the premise, and this sort of a conclusion is inference. If you go back, you will see that's exactly what we have done. So we have concluded that unless this plan is changed, there will be some sites which will possibly get damaged. Okay, the next is that you only take a small step away from the premise, you don't take a giant leap, which we have seen here. that it starts talking about interest in archaeology, then it talks about undiscovered archaeological, it talks about a noise that new highway will generate. So you don't have to introduce any new phenomena or move to away from the premise. You have to be just a small step away, which says that it could be possible that undiscovered archaeological sites would be there on the new highway which is being constructed. The third point is that there has to be an immediate and direct conclusion which flows directly from the premise. So we were already talking about Z being the center of rich archaeological sites, and a new highway plan being in very close vicinity of the site Z, and then it directly flows into talking about what impact will it have on the undiscovered sites. So it's a natural logical conclusion from it. The fourth is, do not change the tone of the passage. That's what we saw. So in here, in one of the examples, it says that the government has shown its commitment and in preserving the heritage sites, and there is no longer a threat to site Z because or any of the undiscovered archaeological sites. So while the tone is critical, the tone itself is very suggestive that this plan is not a good plan for the undiscovered sites. This completely is a reversal in the tone, so you tend to avoid that. The last point is that you do not presuppose any assumption, which is also what we have seen in the previous example, where we are presupposing that the promise is wider promise for the government to commit to preserving archaeological heritage sites, while the promise is very small and concentrated to just keeping highways away from the existing archaeological sites. So the author is trying to put a presupposition, and then basis that presupposition he is then making an inference. So that inference is not correct. So you remember these 5 points. This will help you solve any questions related to drawing an inference or assuming or finding what the inference is. Thank you for listening in, and we will do some practice question, and then we will move on to the other types of questions related to critical reasoning. Thank you.